the dog can see, which helps because it means there's at least two eyes on the job, maybe more, depending on your eye condition. Hello and welcome to the Blindseyepodcast, the podcast discussing everything you did and didn't want to know about being blind. My name is Connor. This week we're going to be talking about the difference between canes and guide dogs and why the differences exists, or why some people choose to use one over the other, and the pros and cons to both. Also, I realise I've been quiet for the last 3 weeks, I think it is. I've been ill, so I didn't want to put anybody through the experience of having to listen to me with a blocked nose, and I really actually wasn't in a good space to be able to record anyway, so that's why it didn't happen. As always, before we get going, if you like what I do, please consider subscribing, sharing, liking, whatever you can do on whatever device it is that you have. That helps. And let's get into it. So when it comes to canes and guide dogs, I often get asked, and other people who are blind or vision impaired get asked, what's the difference? Why choose one over the other? Because there are differences, but it may seem like a straight swap between one and the other. And in some cases that is true, but in some cases it's not. So both are trying to achieve the same thing. They're trying to make you be independently mobile as safely as possible and get to whatever you need to get to in a safe way without vision. But they both do it by different means, because one is obviously an inanimate object and it's completely based on myself and my own skills and my own knowledge and a certain amount of randomness. And the other is another living being in the conversation who can be trained, who can be distracted, yada, yada, yada. So while they're the same tools, they're both mobility tools trying to achieve the same outcomes, there's just a hell of a lot of difference going on, and there is a lot of positives and negatives. The first thing before the positives and the negatives, which we'll get into, is the cost. So a cane costs a couple of bucks, maybe $60, $100, depending on what kind of cane it is. So a lot of people would say, well, why can't you just do that? But again, as I said, there's things that the cane cannot do that the dogs can. And in my own case, I'll explain what I mean by that later on. But from a purely cost perspective, you would kind of say, well, the cane is the obvious choice, especially in a scenario where you're trying to keep costs down. But don't forget as well that guide dogs and seeing eye dogs aren't paid for by somebody like myself who is blind. They are paid for by donations from the public to pay for the training and the upkeep and the health of the dog so that they become the well-oiled machines they are. So I guess what would be the positives of a cane if we start there? Now, the big positives, depending on who you are, you could say, well, canes are cheap. They don't poop. They don't get sick. They don't shed hair. They don't have vet bills. And they don't have emotions attached to it in the same way you would with a dog. And these are all positives. Depending on your perspective. So, but the main thing with the cane is that the cane doesn't mind being left in the corner. You can fold it up, you can put it to one side. Again, it doesn't need to be fed. You don't need to worry about what time you need to be home by in order to take care of it. You don't need to have food on you to keep it fed or for it to find something. So, in terms of a low maintenance tool to help you get around, the cane is perfect because you can just worry about yourself and nothing else. You don't have this whole other being to have to think about, regardless of the pros that come from having that being. And that's why a lot of people choose to not use dogs and they prefer to use canes, because there is a little bit more flexibility in certain scenarios or certain circumstances that come from having the cane. The second big thing is that the cane protects your feet, at least in my opinion, better than the dog, because the whole point of the cane is to touch the ground. So you have a lot more foreknowledge about what you're about to step on, and that means that it's easier to avoid massive falls and big obstacles. Now, it's not so great in terms of the overhead, but in terms of the ground where all the main action is happening, it gives you a lot of feedback, but it's quite protective of your ability to not fall and not have a massive stack, which helps. So I guess going along with this, when you think about the negatives of having a dog, it's the reverse of everything I just said. The dog can get sick, the dog can get distracted, the dog has its off days, the dog can grow old and pass away, which is an unfortunate part of it all. The dog can have its own weird moods. So you can have examples where you're trying to walk and the dog just decides they like something or they don't like something, and you don't really understand what it is that they do or they don't like, and you're trying to move on because you need to get somewhere, and you're trying to be the adult about it or the human about it, and sometimes the dog will just go, nah. And if you try and correct them and get them on the straight and narrow, sometimes they'll perk up if they're in the right mood, and sometimes they won't, and they'll shut down, and it'll become a really stressful, hard situation for both of you. I'm currently going through a bit of that at the moment with my dog, because she can get a bit of low confidence, and then it turns what is a relatively straightforward normal walk, which is much easier than having a cane, into a situation where you have this other thing that you almost need to persuade, that you don't speak the same language as, that you need to try and get moving with, while also trying to consider its feelings and whatever it is that's going on, even though you don't exactly always know what the hell's going on because it's a dog and I can't see. So there could be something easily out there that's making it stressed or whatever, and I just wouldn't have a clue. So again, those are the kinds of things with the dog that you just don't have with a cane. And also on the flip side, in my view, the dog can't protect your feet in the same way as the cane can. So, you walk behind a cane, but you walk alongside a dog. If you ever see anybody with a guide dog or a seeing eye dog, they're walking alongside them. The dog is generally, as far as I'm aware, always on the left-hand side of the person. So what it does mean is that your right-hand side is exposed to whatever might be on that side. And obviously, the dog does its best, but the dog is on the other side of the body to you. So they can't pick up everything, and they're more likely to pick up something that's also going to be in their little sphere of influence that might also affect them. So they can easily sometimes miss things on your right-hand side, and that could include footpath ledges or branches and things like that. So that's a real thing. And I mean, that happened to me where I remember I was walking along a footpath, and the footpath blended, well, it didn't blend into the road, but there wasn't a strip of grass between the footpath and the road. There was just a curb. And I thought I was far enough over to the left, and we're walking, and I rolled my ankle off the side of the footpath and really fell into the traffic. And it's because in that situation, she's on the other side of me and she's trying to move forward, but she might be a little bit unaware that there's something like that so close by, because it's closer to me than it is to her. So that kind of stuff doesn't happen with a cane, and it can happen with the dog. And obviously that's not something you want to happen. For me, it really knocked around my confidence, because I started walking thinking that I was only ever a step away from rolling my right ankle and having a massive injury. So again, that is the thing that you have to think about with the dog versus the canes. I mean, the dog has a lot more pros than the cane, but in this particular instance, that's what basically the story was. It's just that thing that sometimes one is better than the other. So if I go to a bar and I know the bar has high stools, then it's kind of in my mind to go, maybe I just won't bring the dog, because they teach you to put them under low chairs so that they're in out of the way, they can't be stepped on by other patrons. And those high stools in bars, you can't really get the dog in out of the way of. So in a situation like that, I might use the cane. But I also find it harder to find that bar with the cane. So I have to kind of weigh it up and go, I can find my way to this bar easier with the dog. I can find my way around the bar easier with the dog. I can find my way to the bathrooms inside the establishment with the dog. But I will also have to spend all night worrying about the dog at my foot and whether anybody's going to step on her. And that's when it becomes a decision between what you can handle, because sometimes you just want to go out and enjoy yourself and you don't want to have to be constantly worrying about it and fretting about her, because I have to. Her safety is my number one priority. So these are the kind of things you have to take into account. Or it might be the same if I go to a gig. If I go to a gig, I'm definitely not bringing the dog. One, there's too many people. Two, it's too loud. So I'd always bring a cane in that kind of situation. So it really depends on what's actually happening and weighing up the risk reward in terms of your own safety, but also in terms of each other's comfort. Okay, so let's talk about the negatives of a cane. So a cane will break, a cane will bend, the parts of a cane can get gummed up with just picking up crap over the years. They obviously don't think for themselves, which again is a negative. In some situations it's a positive, but in other situations it's a negative because it's a little bit of extra assistance that I might be able to get. The other thing with canes is they're quite taxing mentally. So when you're trying to navigate with a cane and trying to navigate obstacles with a cane, the way you do it is by finding basically every obstacle. That's how you're trained. You're trained to try and feel for that crack in the ground and then go to the right and find the brick wall and then find this and then find that. So it's like there's 20 different segments between A and B. And a big part of using a cane is finding them to know that you're on the right track. But what that means is your concentration levels have to be very, very high. And at the end of the day, it can be very, very taxing and tolling on you because you're having to focus so much that it gets very, very tiring. The other side of the things with the cane as well is you can get wrist injuries with the cane because you're flicking them back and forth. You can get repetitive stress injuries, and you can end up with one wrist that's way more strong and bulky than the other one and stuff like that. So these things all kind of come into account when you're using a cane a heavily amount of time, or if it's your primary mode of mobility. Okay, so the positives of having a dog. Well, the dog can see, which helps because it means there's at least two eyes on the job, maybe more, depending on your eye condition. So the dog can see, the dog can remember, which is very helpful. The dog can recognize things, and the dog can learn. And because of all those things, yes, the first couple of times might be a bit iffy, but because of all that, if you can get things right, it then makes things a lot more straightforward than having to use a cane because you have somebody else helping you and assisting you and making things a little bit more accurate. The other big thing is the dog has a living being's instinct for danger. So a lot of people think that the dogs are just robots, but if I was trying to get her to cross a road, she would have her own internal calculations of what's safe. She's not going to walk into the road into oncoming traffic if she feels it's too close, no matter what I say. Whereas with the cane, it's all on me. It's all on my own perception of what's going on. So with the dogs, that bit of hesitancy, yes, in some situations it's bad, but in other situations, you can kind of read off them, hey, this might be a dangerous situation. Or if I'm walking and coming up to an area of works that are on the footpath and there's like a gaping open drain or something, with the cane, that the cane just might go in there and I might go in after it. But with the dog, they can see there's a hole in front of us and they will stop. And no matter what I say, she's not going to willingly walk herself into a hole. So that instinct for danger that a living being has comes in very useful. Again, it can have its issues, but it comes in useful in those kinds of very dangerous situations. Also with the dog can be trained and reinforced and positively reinforced with sights and smells and sounds and treats and praise. So if I want to get somewhere, she's able to kind of go, this is what this place smells like. And these are the words that Connie uses when we're in this area. And she can associate that word with that smell, with that location. And she goes, last time I came here, I got a pat and I got a treat. So I'll go there again. And then you give her a pat or a treat. And she goes, this was great. I can't wait to come here again because good things happen when we come here. And that's how animal behavioral training works, because it's positively reinforcing that kind of link in their mind between the smell, the sights, the sounds, and the fact that good things happen. So then whenever I want to get her to do that again, she's a lot more likely to do it, or at least be able to get me fairly close because it was a good experience for her. And with that, having the dog means you can find things a lot more routinely, for the lack of a better word, with the dog. So if I'm trying to find something with a cane, I could just be missing it by an inch if the cane isn't hitting it. And that might make me think I'm in the wrong place, and I could be in the right place, but the cane may just be missing whatever it is that I'm trying to get. And that might be enough to make me stop and go, shit, where am I? Have I come too far? Am I in the wrong place? Whereas with the dog, with that training and that positive reinforcement, it's a lot easier to kind of go, okay, she'll go, I'll walk Connor straight up to this counter. And 9 times out of 10, she'll put her nose pretty close to whatever it is that I've trained her to find. So I can put my hand down and feel it and go, okay, yes, this is where I want to be. Or, finding a pole, she can walk straight to the pole. She'll walk me straight to the pole. Whereas with the cane, I might be flailing around just missing the pole and then convince myself I've come too far or I'm not there yet, which is wrong and takes up time and energy and stress and nerves and all that kind of stuff. The other massive positive of the dog is the dog's a companion. The dog is your mate. I was not a dog person before I got Lick. And now she's like my best buddy. She's like a weird kind of hybrid between my child and my friend, because she loves me. She can't wait to see me. She wants to be out and about. She wants to be doing things. She's loyal. There's unconditional love there. And so regardless of all the mobility stuff, which is amazing, it's just a loving factor there and a bond there that, there's nothing more, at least as far as I've experienced, there's nothing more deep and special than almost putting your life in the hands of this thing, because she's making sure that I'm able to live my life. And that really, apart from, the lovely personalities they have and all that kind of stuff, that kind of bond when you find something that you've never found before and you never thought you'd be able to find with a dog that gives you all this joy and love is just an unbelievable feeling, because she's allowing me to do something I otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. And she loves me at the same time. So that bond is really hard to overstate, because it's just like having your hands in the life of something else, or having your life in the hands of something else, I should say. But it's a partnership. It's not all her, it's not all me. It's a partnership, it's a team. So those are the positives and the negatives of both the cane and the dog. I would say that my ability and my mobility really increased when I finally did get the dog and I bit the bullet. But it doesn't mean to say that that's for everybody. But for me, she opened up doors for me that I don't think would have been possible with a cane. For example, my local shopping centre, I was never able to find my way around inside it. I was never comfortable to, because it has one kind of flooring, like linoleum flooring. And that's very hard to spot any features on if you're using a cane to try and navigate via obstacles. Whereas with her, I can just teach her where the shops are that I most go to, and she knows them by now. After 2 years, she knows this is the chemist, this is the hairdresser, this is the bakery, whatever it might be. And it's a lot more straightforward. Now, that's not something I would ever even have considered to be a possibility with the cane, because there was just such an unknown involved. As I said as well, a lot of people ask those with canes, why don't you have a dog? But it is just a personal choice, because some people aren't ready, some people don't like dogs, some people are afraid of dogs, some people don't like the idea that you're entrusting your life and your safety to something that can think for itself. Some people don't like the idea of bonding with something for 10 years that then will pass away, which is, that's a real fear of mine, because she's my first and I love her to bits, and thankfully she's still young. But it's one of those things, whereas if your cane breaks, so what? Who cares? So I can fully understand why some people don't go down that road, because there's a lot of fors and againsts, and it really comes down to personal choice and where you're at and your own comfort levels. Like, another big thing for me was I kind of didn't want to have to take care of something else. I didn't want to have to get all up in her grill and find out if she's healthy and smell all the different body parts, because I couldn't see them to know if they were okay. And I didn't want to have to be feeling up a dog to know if it's okay, but that's what you have to do when you get them. And after a while, and after you've bonded, you don't care about doing those things, because I guess it is kind of like having a child. You love the thing so much that you're willing to do it. But when you haven't even met the dog and it's all theoretical, you go, hell no, I don't need that crap. I like to be able to get up in the morning when I feel like it. I don't want somebody dragging me to the door to let them out to go to the bathroom at 6 o'clock in the morning every morning. So there are all these kinds of things to keep in mind. And it's, at the end of the day, it's everyone's personal choice. I guess the last thing I'll say is there also doesn't really have to be a one or the other. So Licorice is my primary mobility assistance at the moment, but a lot of times I'll have a small cane on me. Like, I have a very slimline fold-up cane that folds up into 7 different pieces, and if we're going out for a walk, I'll just clip that to my hip and I'll be walking with her 90% of the time. But if I ever get into a situation where I need to double check something, or she stops for whatever reason and I'm not sure why, then I can get the cane out, feel around, make sure there's nothing there. Like, sometimes if we're walking in our area, people tend to leave their bins on the footpath when they're leaving them out to get collected. And so sometimes she'll stop and I'll go, like, why are we stopping? And I wouldn't be able to feel the bin necessarily, but I'll whip the cane out and then I'll find the bin, and then I can navigate us around the bin, or ask her to navigate us around the bin, and then we'll be on our way. So it's not like if you have the dog, you can't ever use a cane, because there are always situations where you need to use a cane, or you might just want to, because it might take the pressure off me or off her, or whatever might be the case. So it definitely isn't an either or. But, obviously, if you have a cane and you use that most of the time, You can't then go, oh, well, I'll use the dog when I feel like it, because the dog needs the constant upkeep. The dog needs the constant reinforcement and to be out and about, because that's how it learns and that's how it makes sure that it's on top of its game. So, but in terms of having the dog, yes, I always have canes on me and I always have one nearby if I need to for whatever reason. So I hope that was an interesting episode. Again, sorry for being dark for the last couple of weeks, but it just couldn't be helped. So I'm hoping to be back on the normal scheduling from now on. Happy Easter as well to everybody out there. Hopefully it's as normal as can be wherever you're listening from. And yeah, I'll be in touch in hopefully next week. As always, you can get in touch with the show by emailing blindseyepodcast@gmail.com. That's BLINDSEYE podcast@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram if you search for Blindseye Podcast. I'm on Twitter @BlindSeyePod. And if you just want one central location for everything and all the previous episodes and some blogs that I write and stuff like that, then go to blindseyepodcast.com. And I'll be back to speak to you next week. Cheers.